Chair, can I just, point of information, just ask, I'd just like to request that, that was a very interesting discussion, and Senator Boyhan triggered there in terms of the jurisdiction of the various courts. As a layperson, I'm not familiar with the jurisdiction of various courts, and I think when you are making a further submission to us, it would be helpful for the committee if you could just give us a simple explainer on that. From what I've understood, the issue is not that there won't be any appeal, it's just that there won't be an appeal to the appeal. It's proposed that there wouldn't be the right to appeal to the Court of Appeal, there would be the right to appeal to the Supreme Court. It would be really helpful for us to understand the legal context for those operational matters. And if you could provide us with that, I think that would be useful.
Or is that something that you could explain to us briefly, because it might help further?
I think it's a really pertinent issue, and I think the context is important, yes.
If anybody wishes to take that? Mr. Flynn,
do it now.
I suppose, and I'm interested, I suppose, is are there other areas of law that are excluded from an appeal to the Court of Appeal, for example? That's something I don't know.
Well, to my knowledge, there aren't.
There would be maybe other areas of law.
Very limited.
At the moment, as you might know, if you want to appeal a planning decision, you have to seek leave to appeal, or sorry, the High Court decision, you have to seek leave to appeal from the High Court, so there isn't an automatic right to go to the Court of Appeal. And I think there are other areas where there are some restrictions.
There are some restrictions. It's generally the exception. Sorry, in terms of certification, there are other cases where you have, I think procurement, you have to obtain certifications. In other words, you can't simply write an appeal. You have to go before the court and set out, in accordance with certain criteria, that there has to be an appeal. But what's being proposed here is to remove even that right, just to be clear. It's a complete ouster of the Court of Appeal's jurisdiction in respect of planning cases. And to my knowledge, I'm not aware that there's another area of law, and it could be open to correction.
If you can come back to us on that, that would be
where there's been a complete ouster. Now, just to be clear, there's still a residual right to appeal to the Supreme Court, and by a quirk of the system, the criterion for appealing to the Supreme Court, it's called a leapfrog appeal because you don't go, is actually lower than the Court of Appeal. So therefore, the argument would be, the pragmatic argument would be that really this doesn't make any difference. And, you know, there's certainly a case for that it doesn't make any difference. You're still going to be, if there's an issue arising, you're still going to have your leapfrog appeal. But I presume that the principal argument is, and many lawyers would be reluctant with the idea of ousting the jurisdiction of a court completely.
There is one exception.
And actually, sorry, just Rachel, before you come, so when you come back to us, what would be really beneficial for us to know is what is the disadvantage, the lawyers who would argue that it is a, that it is, I apologise now to the committee, but that it is a diminution, let's say, of access to justice. If they could, if we could get an explanation to that, because it's a really important issue, the access to justice in this. So apologies.
It's in the public interest. I think we'll allow that. Very much so. Does anybody wish to respond to that?
Oh, apologies. There is just one exception, that this abolition of the right of appeal to the Court of Appeal, you can still appeal insofar as the determination of the High Court involves a question as to the validity of any law having regard to the provisions of the Constitution.
Yeah, the Constitution provisions,